Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm joined today by the smiling John Hughes, Patrick McGilp, and James McKenzie. What a time, lads, to be a Celtic supporter. I'm going to start with you, Paddy McGilp. What's been going on in the last week, mate? We've got Tierney coming back, Jota's in the building, farewell Kyogo, farewell Baye, Aston Villa down the road, old school European Cup game. Cracking, love it.
It's been a fair roller coaster of a week. Obviously, it came with there was the initial sort of the tense night we had last Wednesday. I'm surprised John managed to get through it because he was nervous
He was
for a
in
full
bits.
week, and
He was in
that
bits.
that, that second half must have taken a few years off of your life, John. But we got there in the end, and obviously you get home, you're sort of celebrating for like about half an hour scrolling on Twitter, and then that Kyogo news hits you. And you think, oh my God, what's happening here? And there was that sort of one wee sort of rumour that Jota might be coming the other way. And then the next day, I think it was Fabrizio Romano and Anthony Joseph. And it was basically confirmed that Kyogo would definitely leave and Jota would almost certainly come back. And obviously, we had to wait till Monday for that to be confirmed. But I mean, that is a true definition of mixed emotions, totally conflicting feelings because I thought losing Kyogo was daft and silly, and to do it in the middle of the season especially is not ideal. But obviously when a player wants to go, he wants to go, and there's not a lot you can do about it in that situation. Obviously the blow was softened by Jota coming back. It's still unbelievable now. I mean, such a good player that I still can't believe he's back. When all these rumours were circulating around January, or two clubs in a row, it's not worked out for him, and you think, oh, could he come back? I always thought he was not too good for Celtic, but he's such a good player. It's hard to imagine him coming back. But we've got him, hopefully for a wee while yet, and hopefully can rekindle his form. And obviously, we've qualified for the knockout rounds of the Champions League. Tonight is a bit of a free hit. Try and maybe get us out on the road. Maybe just sort of, you know, avoid a repeat of Dortmund would be ideal. Because Aston Villa, certainly at home, are a fantastic side. But it's been a roller coaster of a few days. But the season so far, I mean, you can have no complaints, and it's shaping up to be a true classic. I mean, we've completed our European objective, in my opinion. We've got the League Cup in the bag. We're so far ahead in the league, it's untrue. And you're 4 games away from a Scottish Cup, and in my opinion, a treble. So it's a great time to be alive, as you said at the outset.
It is, Patrick. We'll find little things that annoy us about it, though, I'm pretty sure. But the comments about the Dortmund, absolutely. I mean, Aston Villa are a quality side. I was looking at their record yesterday, and they've only gone through 3 games in the league, John, without conceding a goal. But in the Champions League, they've had 4 clean sheets out of 7. So they're performing really well. I think they were really disappointed with the Monaco result away from home. Tuned into a couple of Villa podcasts just to see what their feeling was going in against Celtic. I would say that they're quietly confident, but they're not as brash as some of the pundits, John, the fan base, having watched their podcast. Pretty respectful to Celtic.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, that's just some background music there. Sorry.
Can I just say, John, before you go into it, can I just say the fact that you've played that reminds me that young James had the Jota haircut and the moustache. Will it be returning, James, now that Jota's back?
So
I think that's the expectation, isn't it? It's
can't
good
make
to
any
me.
promises.
if you could put James's head on Chris McElwain's body, then you'd have an actual Jota. Fully dressed.
Oh, brilliant!
Fully dressed Jota.
I love it, John. I think they're confident, John, but there's a lot more respect, by the way, and I don't mean from the ultras. That's a different conversation entirely.
Yeah.
There's a lot more respect, certainly from the Villa podcasters and the fan base in that respect, than there has been from some areas of the media down south. But we just expect that, don't we?
So, I mean, I think, for respect, we have to put it in context. People might not be aware of the context. So, just below Gretna Green, there dangles a bit of wasteland not inhabited by Scottish people. In the middle of said wasteland, a community of small villages was built. And one of them, eventually, they got to the stage where they built a big house. They called that the Villa. And then they started a wee football team, which is great. First sign of civilization. and they've been doing super well. It's in an area of Brigham or something like that, one of those Roman names, not great with the foreign languages, but Brigham or something like that. But as I say, the Romans successfully invaded there. They didn't invade us, obviously, so we don't have anything like that. But anyway, they've done very well, so they've managed to keep their team going. Well done, lads. Very important for community spirit. They haven't been in the Champions League for 40 years until this year. And all of that's going to be clipped, and it was made right back in my face if we don't get some sort of result tonight. It's a big ask, isn't it? With the team, I was actually going through it earlier. Our squads. Our bench tonight is going to be the weakest bench we've had, and I don't know how long. You're going through the back. And most of the guys that are in the squad are gone. Do you know what I mean? So I think Mirovski's still here, isn't he? But CCV's out injured. Welsh is gone. Vaille's gone. Which leaves us only with Mirovski, Ralston, and Montgomery that are in the squad.
Yeah.
In the midfield, and even up front, we've really only got McCowan, Bernardo, Palma that might be on the. We're struggling, really struggling, so for all the fact that, it's been a hell of a ride, as you say, with Jota coming back in, who I absolutely love Jota, but, so he's coming back in. For this game, in particular, because Maeda suspended, the loss of Kyogo is massive, because he was our best stand-in winger as well. So, tonight, I think if we do backs to the wall like we did against Atalanta, I think you might even have to change the formation tonight, just because I'm not sure we can dig three out the bag up front, if someone gets injured. So it's going to be a big ask. And as Patrick said, I was right about last week. It was hellish. It was absolutely hellish. And despite the fact I gave an optimistic prediction at the end, all that anxiety was warranted. And it took years off my life in more than one way. Certainly took a day off my life because, dry January went straight in the bin, and Thursday was a bit of a non-entity. So that didn't happen. It was.
We have the pictures to prove it, John.
It was pretty tense, and yes, I was posting pictures quite late at night on Twitter and stuff. So I was well pleased, but my missus went to bed early, obviously, because I'm just screaming at the telly. But I put it on my headphones rather than have it blaring. But the volume of the TV wasn't the problem; it was me screaming, and with the amount of goals that were ruled off, she was just incredibly confused. The next morning as to what the result was, because there was constantly, up out your seat, screaming your lungs out, and then within seconds, every swear word you can think of getting thrown at the TV. So, and that happened so many times. It was just, and then the penalty, and then it's just unbelievable game. And just look, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we don't have to win this one, because I think it's a real big ask for us.
It's massive, John. It's really tough. And I think when we're going into this game, James, as John says, you want to be in your best shape. You want to have all the quality at your disposal. We don't quite have that tonight. We know that Carter Vickers is out. Brendan Rodgers spoke about that yesterday. We've sold Kyogo. We've sold Baye. Bernabe wouldn't have been playing. Nawrocki will be on the bench. Dane Murray will be on the bench. A couple of other youngsters probably will join them, because it's quite thin on the ground. My take yesterday was, we don't go with Yang, we don't go with Palmer, we go with McCowan on the left-hand side, and he's not going to be playing as an out-and-out winger, because in defence he'll tuck into the midfield and we will be defending for a spell. Ida up top, the rest of the team more or less picks itself. Scales and Trusty doing the job they did at Atalanta. Hoping and praying that Johnston and Taylor get through the game, James. But it's unfortunate, and I think that's why there was a frustration around the timing of the Kyogo departure. But Rodgers seems quite bold about it when he's asked. He said it again yesterday. You know, he doesn't want to be here. Time to go out. He's obviously wanting another striker in, but there's not much time to do the business, is there?
Yeah, running out of time. 29th of January, there's a wee glance up at the calendar. We really need to act on it. We might wait until the summer, I think. If there's murmurs of Daizen Maeda maybe playing through the middle for the rest of the season, having him as an option, and you're going to bring another winger in, the Norwegian guy, to come in, that could be an idea. And you were talking about maybe experimenting with the team selection tonight, maybe playing Luke McCowan on the left. We've played Rio Hatate at left back a couple of times. I think he played there when he was in Japan. Could you even try him at left wing if you wanted to have him play the same way that you were talking about with Luke McCowan? It could be some interest if Brendan Rodgers wants to try something different with the team, but I think it's going to be a very, very tough match. You've got Carter Vickers played last week. He's missing. Daizen Maeda's missing. Kyogo's missing. It's going to be absolutely incredibly difficult. But it's been a whirlwind week for Celtic. And I just need to go back to that Young Boys game. John was saying it took some years off his life. That chance right at the end, the Young Boys had right before the final whistle, time stood still there. I got flashbacks to when Pedro got the late goal for Lazio last year in the Champions League. And as soon as Schmeichel rests on that ball, all the nerves were settled. That was it. And I'm so thankful that we don't need to go into this Villa game needing the result, because that was looking like the case. It didn't look like Celtic were going to get the goal. It was a typical Celtic in Europe game. That was exactly the way it was going. But it's going to be a very tough game tonight against Aston Villa. Going down to England, all your Premier League teams are going to be very tough. And I don't think the Aston Villa fans, they've showed us a lot of respect. The Aston Villa fans, they don't really have the superiority complex that you get with a lot of the other English teams, because they were down in the dumps. They were in the English Championship not even a decade ago. They were really down and low, and now they're back up at the top again. So they're showing us a lot more respect, and I think it's going to be a really tough game. But thank God we don't need to go in desperate to try and get the win.
You're right.
Can I just say, I thought I was over last week's trauma, but as soon as you said that, James, just a wave of anxiety flooded over me there. Just as soon as you started discussing that chance, I was like, oh my God.
Yep.
It was grim. Anyway, sorry.
Schmeichel gathering the ball, John, and then Brendan turning around with that big white smile. You know, you're just thinking, I'm glad you're chilled, Brendan, because none of us are.
Can I just say, Paul John, you said there'll be youngsters on the bench, but why would they be on the bench? Because they can't play. Because I was looking at the 25-man squad. Montgomery's the only one on it that's not usually there. We don't have unless I'm looking at the wrong squad, we don't have the likes of Cummings or Kenny or, the end. No one's on it.
The reason
and I've heard other people talking about it. It is, but I've heard
Mitchell Frame got Frame got thrown in against Feyenoord last season. I don't think he was registered. I think it's some sort of rule where, depending on the age of the player, they don't need to be registered, I don't think.
Murray was on the bench against Young Boys, John. That's the reason I threw it in, because he wasn't in that initial Champions League squad.
You're absolutely right. Right. He wasn't,
So they threw him in. I seen yesterday there was a couple of boys signing up. Cummins not being one of them, James. He was conspicuous by his absence there on the new contract front. But before we move on, James, you need to answer the question, will you be growing back the Mauser and the mullet?
Well, I graduate uni, hopefully, this summer. Hopefully going into a career in journalism. I'd like to keep a bit of professionalism about myself. So I think the mullet is going to be staying away for the foreseeable.
I'm gutted, personally. Right, let's get some of your comments coming in. It's a massive night for Celtic tonight. I called it an old school European Cup clash because Villa and Celtic, of course, have won the European Cup. And that was at a time where you had to be the champions of your league to get into the competition. John Mullane, here we go. Dig in. Head says 0-0. Heart 2-1. Last minute winner, says John. Yesterday I was feeling like you can go right back the 8 years of a Celtic state of mind. I have never predicted a defeat for Celtic. Never once. And I never will. So yesterday, I predicted that Celtic will win the game 1-0. Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, AJ better be tucked up in the stand with a wee bottle of Keith's ale. Would be awful if he played and got booked. I think he'll start, though. I do think he'll start. Jungle Lion, few Cowboys in this Villa support are looking for trouble tonight. The reason I brought that up is looking at obviously the output of the Villa Ultras. It's just a case of making sure every Celtic fan down in Birmingham this evening and during the day are safe, try and stick together and go to the hostelries, etc., that are going to be Celtic minded. Try and keep everybody safe and close to you as well. And you know what it's like, Patrick, when you're on a away day and somebody has a few. Just make sure all the groups stick together and keep safe. Mark O'Donnell can't see any positive result tonight, but thought the same about Atalanta. So we wait and see and try to remain positive. Now that's turned into something of our best, in many, many ways, our best performance. Maybe not to the eye, Patrick, but in terms of the way we approached that Atalanta game, defended so well, either up top, everybody done their job. Trusty and Scales, who will be the partnership tonight, were brilliant. Didn't Scales win man of the match that night, I think? Baye came on at half-time. Brendan Rodgers spoke about his performance yesterday. Is that the type of approach we're going to have tonight, Patrick? Or are you asking for trouble if you go to defend against Villa tonight? Because they are, when you're looking at them as an attacking force, they can tear you to shreds.
They can, but I think playing our usual game with a high line, only leaving one or two guys back, I think that would be a disaster as well. So I think you've got to look at Atalanta as the model for how we play tonight. I really, really have no idea how this game is going to go because they're not on that great a run. I mean, they snuck by Everton a few weeks ago, and then they get 2 draws and a loss in their last 3 games. So they're not in great form. So I mean, if we can go down there and frustrate them, and just try and hit Kuhn on the break, try and get the ball up the park, I think that could be a decent strategy. I think I'd be tempted to go with your thoughts on McCowan as well out wide. I remember towards the end of the double treble season, Rodgers' last stint in his second season, McGregor came in for Sinclair on the left wing, just to keep the ball. I think just to keep possession, keep the ball moving around the team, because Sinclair obviously had that dip in his second season. So I don't think having a midfielder playing out wide just to keep the ball, have a bit of control in the game, I don't think that's the worst idea by any means. I'm going to be a bit positive, and I'll jump the gun and I'll predict a nothing each. I'll copy the Atalanta result. To be honest, I'd be happy if we avoided an embarrassment like Dortmund. I mean, this is a really, really good side, and I don't think the record still stands just now, but I think last season they didn't lose a home game. I think they won almost every home game. So they've made Villa Park a fortress. Unai Emery's done a tremendous job. So it's hard to see us going there and winning. And, thankfully we have done the business in the 7 games that have gone before. But I'll follow your suit. I'll not predict a defeat. I'll try and stay positive. And I think we've got to copy the Atalanta model, and hopefully we copy the result as well. I'll go for a nothing each.
Well, listen, coming away with a nothing each would be tremendous, I think, under the circumstances as well. And one of the missing bodies, John, is, of course, Kyogo Furuhashi. We enjoyed him for 3.5 years at Celtic Park. But I know, a lot of people, like Lawrence Chester, says once a Celtic player leaves, he's not interested in them and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. And a few people backed him up in the comments section. But Kyogo did make such an incredible impression in that short space of time, John. He was an iconic player. And he just wasn't the same player, I don't think, under Brendan. You can look at the stats and that proves that in terms of his lack of goals. He wasn't as prolific under Brendan as he was under Ange Postecoglou. And Brendan kept going on about, look, I don't need my centre-forward to score 30 goals, etc. And then yesterday, Brendan talks about the fact that he's been wanting away for months. We've known about this for ages. So a couple of things to take from that. That means that we've obviously got a number 1 striker lined up to bring him back to the club before the end of January, of course. But it's a shame that Kyogo wanted to leave. And leave for what? We've got Champions League playoff football against, and he's languishing in League One.
I think, like absolutely everybody else, you're like, what was that about the timing?
I know.
Because seriously, he couldn't have played tonight. He didn't play for them at the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So what was all that about? Was it so important to coordinate, announcements on players? That was very nice and, well done, the PR guys. But, what relevance is that? And again, I go back. I was listening to Liam yesterday because obviously he knows more about the Japanese manager, but it is very difficult. I mean, the Japanese manager, I think I have to agree with Liam, he just doesn't like him. And if someone has told him to go there because he's got more chance of playing, he's got more chance of playing in a team that's probably going to get relegated this year, might well get relegated this year, right? And even if they don't, they're a bottom of the table French team. He's got more chance of getting a national team playing for them than he has playing for us in the Champions League. Do me a favour. Do me a favour. Absolute nonsense. You know, it's a higher level. It's a higher level maybe at the top end of it. You know, a couple of teams at the top end of it. So, you know, but you'd be playing teams of that calibre with us more regularly in the Champions League. You know, so it was a while. I don't know. I'm very... I think it's more, it cannot, in my mind, be a coincidence. I know people have said there's no connection. Cannot be a coincidence. He's away to Rennes and re-signed Jota back as well from Rennes. I mean, I find that a bit much to swallow in terms of coincidence. So, I mean, I think it's a terrible move for Kyogo. I mean, he wants a different challenge. That's fair enough. He's 30 years old. He's doubling his wages, and fair play to him. You know, but I think Celtic would have given him a decent contract if he wanted to stay. You know, he might not have doubled his wages, but they got a raise. So I just think it's a real weird decision. I can't put my finger on why he's done it. There's nothing that Rennes offer that can be compared to Celtic. There's nothing. You know, so it's just, to me, anyway, weird. And again, they've said there, I mean, one of the things is, you know, one of the reasons Jota come back is because their manager doesn't play with wingers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Kyogo feeds off wingers. He lives off good wingers.
Yeah.
You know, so again, that's another bizarre thing. I just don't get it. Look, I love the wee man. He was absolutely sensational. I loved watching him. Even when he didn't score, you loved watching him because of the way he played the game. Loved his attitude. Loved everything about him as a player, as a man. He was a sensational player for Celtic. He deserves everyone's best wishes. And I do not understand. You see people, like, you know, I suppose, you know, you shouldn't really watch social media posts because it's just, sometimes it's just the worst of the worst that you see. But, you know, all the invective flying, you know, Feckham and all that, you know, and you're like, do me a favour. The guy's given us 3.5 years of absolute brilliance. You know, I was fortunate to be in the stadium when he scored against Rangers last year, and that, you know, turning on the ball and that swivel in the back of the net. What a moment that was. And the wee man was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I saw you had the discussion yesterday about whether he's the best since Larsson. You know, Lawrence is a very good friend of mine, so I'm sorry to see him having an aneurysm on here. I say he's going to kill me for that. But, you know, Robbie Keane, come on. You know, but I took his point. But anyway, still. So I'm going to have to apologise for that later now. Anyway, but, you know, it's an interesting discussion. And, you know, I started another discussion the other day about, you know, Jota's, you know, how good a transfer that was. But, you know, to finish your point, it's a hell of a shame to see Kyogo go, especially now. We are so thin up front. I mean, Ida's going to have to play the whole 90. He hasn't. When was the last time he played 90?
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can't even remember. That would have been. Oh, actually, when was the last time he played 90? I can't actually. I was thinking last year, but I can't remember last season.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a game. There was a game where we brought Kyogo on and kept Ida on. So maybe at some point in the season, John, but it doesn't, you know, it's not something that happens that often. It was always 60, 65, whoever's playing up front comes off for the alternative. So you're spot on. He is going to have to run his socks off tonight.
Well, I think it is very much, for me, it is absolutely, as Patrick said, the Atalanta performance. Dig in, banks of 4, dig in, you know, leave the big man up there on his own. You know, play McCowan on the left, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter. You know, because who are we losing by doing that? Yang, Palmer, You know, so what's the team losing by doing that? So play McCowan. Even I would even agree, but I think that's even a good idea. What James said, play Hatate and bring Bernardo in. Play Hatate on the left, bring Bernardo in, keep the midfield a bit more solid.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, really think we need to dig in tonight. I don't think we've got the firepower. So now, admittedly, I listened to a boy earlier on saying the one thing that's guaranteed is if we stay in the game, Villa will give us chances. So that's interesting. But even the big man, as I said last week, Big Ida, I mean, that was a genius move. I would never have thought of that, to play the ball off the goalkeeper and the defender.
He did well.
It was a brilliant bit of
the ricochet. Absolutely.
Yeah, instinctive football that was. So fair play to him. But the simplest thing to do would have been beat the goalie. But he's a bit of a glory hunter, the big man, so he wanted to do it the more complicated way. But I hope that's given him a lot of confidence, because wow, do we need him to have a big game tonight in every aspect. We need him to have a game that he hasn't had since the middle of last season. So it needs to be sensational from the big man tonight.
It does, John. It needs to be up there with the kind of performances we saw last season, where he was the match winner, in big, important league games and in the Scottish Cup as well. For anyone who didn't get a whiff of yesterday's discussion, debate, argument between myself and Lawrence, we were talking about the best Celtic striker since Larsson. So we're not comparing Kyogo to Larsson, but we were talking about who was the best Celtic striker since Larsson. And Lawrence reckoned it's Robbie Keane. My argument to that is he played 16 games. Best striker, possibly, but not for Celtic, would be my view. And it's like, I guess, Freddie Ljungberg was a tremendous football player, right? But see, at the age of 25, Freddie Ljungberg, if you were to compare him to Jota, was a better winger than Jota. He was winning the double with Arsenal, in the Premiership in England. So, was Freddie Ljungberg a better player, a better winger for Celtic? Of course he wasn't. So that was the argument, in case anybody was wondering. James, we go into this game, and as John quite rightly said there, defensively, they could be got at. They do have injury concerns. Torres has got a broken foot. Tyrone Mings is a major doubt. I didn't see yesterday or today if he's confirmed as being out, or even if they would confirm it. Brendan confirms all these things well in advance and gives away his lineup regularly. So if we can attack that. And we do have players who can do it. I mean, Kuhn's having a tremendous season. Offensively, we do have that type of player. So, although they've got quality all over the park, and particularly in attack, James, they're not, it's not as if they're impeachable. There's vulnerabilities within this team as well.
Yeah, they're not invincible. They are an English Premiership team, but they're not a Liverpool or this sort of team where we're going to go there and we're going to expect to get an absolute hiding. I saw them against West Ham at the weekend, and they gave up a good few chances. Graham Potter, the new West Ham manager, he plays some good football, and he was able to unlock that Aston Villa defence on multiple occasions. And that's a West Ham team that have looked pretty dreadful this season, to be honest. They've taken a few battings. So Aston Villa, they're definitely there to be got at. We've got players like, as you mentioned, Nicholas Kuhn. I think we also need Rio Hatate at the top of his game. I've been very critical of him this season. I feel like he's a bit too inconsistent. But when he's on his game, and he can play a pass like he did against Young Boys last week that can completely unlock our defence and it can completely change a game. So we need Rio Hatate at his very best. I think you need Adam Ida at his very best as well. Are you giving Adam Ida the goal against Young Boys, or are we counting that as our own goal?
I'm giving it to Tiger Tim.
Well, I think, how many games has Ida gone without a goal now? It's a drought, that's for sure. And we need Adam Ida back in the goals quickly. We can't forget that the 6 months of last season, he was a massive moments player. We've lost a moments player in Kyogo. As you mentioned, the stats and the goals may have dried up under Brendan Rodgers. One thing he never lost was that knack for popping up in the big moments, in derbies and cup finals. Kyogo was always there, and we need Adam Ida to fill those boots. We know he can step up in the big moments, as we saw against Young Boys last week, and we need him to have a very big game. But I think probably the most important players in the park who need to be at the top of their game is Liam Scales and Austin Trusty. We've seen this season, we've seen across multiple seasons with Liam Scales, there is mistakes in the game. But when they're on it, they're on it. We saw it against Atalanta, heading absolutely everything away. So we need a display like that. We don't need a display like Dortmund where we're getting cut open time after time after time after time. We need everybody at the top of their game. Shore things up, lock it out. When the chances come, take them. That was another thing that I'm sure annoyed all of us watching that young boys game. The amount of chances we had. 3 disallowed goals.
Unreal.
A penalty miss. And then the chances carried over at the second half as well. We still had plenty of chances there as well to kill the game off. And we need to be much more clinical against Aston Villa because we've got a top goalkeeper in Emiliano Martinez, a World Cup winner. He's heralded as one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He's going to be pretty hard to beat. We need everybody at the top of their game.
The thing is as well, James, when you're looking at the creation of chances, it was one of the nights that we could have been 3 or 4 nothing goals ahead at half time, 3 or 4 nothing up. It would have been a great way for Kyogo to sign off, but every single time he hit the back of the net, it was chopped off. Some people have been quite critical of that. There was one goal we could do nothing about, obviously. But that was due to a foul by Callum McGregor. And I'm going to speak about McGregor for a wee while because, Patrick, there was a lot of chat about a certain John McGinn. Dearie me, here we go again. The John McGinn Claxon. But we are facing him tonight for the first time in a while. But our own midfield, for me, is the strongest area of our team. And I would start with the normal 3. I get why you would maybe put Hatate out there because that allows you to, out on the left, because that allows you to bring in Bernardo and you can maybe shore it up. It wouldn't surprise me if that did happen. But Callum McGregor last week against Young Boys probably didn't get the credit he deserved because, it looked as though we kind of, in the first half, absolutely dominated it. And in the second half, it was like, when's this goal going to come? But see McGregor's first 45 minutes, that for me was probably his best half of football in Europe for Celtic, bar none. He was outstanding last week.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. And, that first half, we were exceptional. It's just really, really unfortunate. I mean, in the stadium, I really could not see what was wrong with that second goal. The first goal, I think, was quite clearly offside. Second goal, I couldn't see a fault in it. Obviously, the replay showed the foul. Third goal, it all happened so quickly, I couldn't really tell. So he's a bit unfortunate that he catches a leg and it was chopped off, and it's a shame for Kyogo, obviously. But I've not seen people really highlight this. He did actually get to celebrate with the fans. I know it was eventually chopped off, but he did get to go over to that corner and celebrate and have his moment. And although it was chopped off and he's left, it's a moment he can hang on to, hopefully. But I thought Callum McGregor was tremendous, and I think you'd be hard pressed to pick a man of the match in that first half. Kyogo, Kun, Maeda, all brilliant. Hatate obviously had a great game, got the assist in the end. I thought they were pretty impressive defensively. They had obviously an impressive physicality. They were really, really a tall team. But going forward, I think they offered next to nothing. Obviously, you have that double save about the 65th minute that Casper has to make, and you have that moment right at the end that James spoke about 10 minutes ago. But apart from that, I think they offered pretty much nothing. But Callum, he was a standout, and I think that was important because in the derby game at New Year, he did have a bit of an off game, and I think the whole team was having a bit of a wobble, a bit of a dip in form over the new year. But him especially, he's Mr. Consistent. It's 7, 8 out of 10 every game, and hopefully he's back to that now. They've had a week rest, a week to prepare, and as much as we're talking about bringing new guys into the 11 because of the transfer, because of the injuries, the suspensions. Hopefully they are all well rested. I had a look just while John was talking about it. The last time he'd played 90 minutes was 5-0 against Ross County at the end of November. It was also the last time he scored a goal, if we're not awarding the young boys goal to him. He was phenomenal that day, particularly in the first half. We went 5-0 up in the first half. He got a goal. It was also the last time he played 90 minutes. So hopefully he can repeat the feat. I don't think the 5-0 will be repeated, but if he can get a goal tonight, that would be tremendous. I'd actually forgotten until James mentioned the quality of their goalkeeper. I mean, if we get a penalty, I wouldn't even be confident of us scoring it because what a keeper he is. Absolutely phenomenal for Argentina in all 3 of their competition wins in the last couple of years. And yeah, I think I'm actually more worried now that you've said that, James. I don't know how we're going to breach that defence, but I'll stick with my 0-0. I'd be happy with a 0-0. But as you say, we need McGregor. to have a similar performance as they did last week. We needed it
Well,
to really show up and keep running. Sorry?
You've just put the picture into my head. Arne Engels absolutely crapping himself, stepping up to take a penalty against Martinez, pulling out all the dark arts and all the mind games that he does before a penalty. I'd hate to be Arne Engels in that situation. Just to carry on the McGregor point as well, we're talking about the young boys' performance. If I was going to go a wee bit further back in the Champions League campaign, his performance against Red Bull Leipzig is up there with one of his best performances in a Celtic shirt, I think. He was absolutely phenomenal that night. He completely ran the show from start to finish. And if you can try and replicate something like that against Aston Villa, take control of the game, and it'll stand us in good stead.
I actually think, James, that's a more relevant point, because I was making fun of someone, who was saying that we are going to win the young boys game comfortably, and I was like, yeah, mate, because they're going to have had a month off and they're not going to have watched the Rangers game or the other games that we have struggled. So you think they're not going to play up two big strikers up there, and they're not going to man mark Callum, and they're not going to press our midfield and let our centre backs have the ball. I said they'd have to have the worst coaching team in history to not do that, and they didn't. They didn't do any of that. They pressed the centre halves, let the midfield go, let Callum had the run of the place. They were insanely bad in terms of the setup. They were awful. And Callum did what Callum does when he's on fire, and they didn't do anything to stop him. It was just, that's why I think our whole midfield looked good in that game, especially the first 45. Because they weren't doing anything to stop them. Now, Red Bull's a different standard, but, we have to acknowledge the fact that game should have been 5 or 6-0. Young boys are a dreadful side, and they played like a dreadful side. And then we get tired in the second half, and then, we're obviously dropping off a wee bit, even though you could argue that they're coming back into the game. But, I mean, they were so poor. They were coming back into the game because we were dropping off. And, again, Callum was brilliant for the majority of that. But, they weren't doing anything to stop him. And the interesting thing tonight is Villa play a 4-4-2, and they don't play... There's absolutely no way they're man-marking Callum. I heard one of their stats guys saying that there's no way they'll do that. They just play their 4-4-2. So, Callum's going to have space to influence the game tonight as well. They will be pressing. Obviously, they're to say they're a better side than young boys would be the understatement of the century. But, they are a very good side, and they will press them. They will make life difficult for us. But they're not going to be man-marking anyone. So again, potentially there is space. I'm just sorry. I'm clawing at clutching at straws of hope here. But there is. I mean, they're not by any means an invincible side. But the issue that we have tonight is, despite their injuries, this is a massive game for them. Massive game for them, because they have a genuine shot at automatic qualification. Whereas if we win, we still need. I don't know, about 6, 7, 8 other results to go our way. But I did think yesterday in the press conference when Brendan said he wouldn't risk Trusty, and Michael Nicholson in the background thinking about the 12 million quid you get for automatic qualification, just having palpitations. No, he wouldn't risk Carter Vickers. And you're just thinking the money men have, coming over all faint when he heard them saying that. Because we still have a chance at automatic qualification, as faint as it may be.
This, John, there was a few things.
I'll give you a couple of examples of some of the results that we would need to get top 8, courtesy of an article from Acsom contributor Barry Sinnott. We need Real Madrid to draw with Brest, very faint. Benfica to beat Juventus. Leverkusen to draw or lose against Sparta Prague. Shakhtar Donetsk to beat Dortmund. And this is all also including us beating Aston Villa. So I made the prediction last time.
Look, I wouldn't put a ton of money on it. That's what I'm saying.
The last time I was on the show, it was before Zagreb, before Bruges. I predicted we would finish in the top 8. So there's still a chance. There's a slim chance.
There is.
Well, the one thing that we do know is, and I think obviously this is Brendan is thinking, and when you look at that, this tournament has not turned out the way it was intended obviously, and the seedings and all the rest of it. Let's say that we got a draw tonight, or even a win, and you finish 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. There is absolutely no guarantee at all you don't end up with a murderously bad draw. Because some of the big guns have really been toiling in this competition. You just look around, who's sitting round where we are just now. And it's there is no guarantee. It's supposed to turn out that way. It's supposed to, obviously, the higher you finish, the easier the game you get. That's not happening. I don't think that's happening at all. So we could still finish, 23rd, 24th, and get a better draw than we would if we'd finished 12th.
Yeah.
So, that's not the way it's supposed to go, but it looks like that's what's happening.
No, you're right, John. Yeah, that's the thing. So that permutation that James read out there, let's kind of keep an eye on that one tonight, because all the games are playing this evening. Callum McGregor will make, I believe, his 498th appearance for Celtic. That's unbelievable. And there was a lot of people during this season saying, he's lost his legs, he's somebody that's regressing, etc., etc. But he's able to put in these performances like the one John mentioned, like the game against Young Boys last week. Absolutely tremendous. Lots of good comments coming in. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Ian Corbett says, Big Arnie should want to hit a penalty against a World Cup winner. That's what it's all about. And by the way, I think he probably wants to as well, Ian. He seems like a confident lad. Craig McMeekin, I think we forget too quickly how good we can be. Our record against English teams is pretty positive. Keep the faith. We've also got Chill Pill. Might be a game for Bernardo tonight. I can see why he would be picked in the starting 11. Absolutely great defensive qualities. Johnny Ryan, Kuhn, Ida and Yang will be the front three.
Oh, God help us.
Come on, Johnny boy. Well, we're going to try and get through this without mentioning Yang. But on a serious note, Patrick, this is why when we're talking about players leading up to this particular game, this kind of game, and the playoffs, we talk about, and we probably scrutinise guys like Yang with a view to, can he compete at this level? Because this is where we want to play. We know that we're quite a bit away from being, as strong as a team like Villa. We know why. We get it. We know the background to that. But going into a game like this, there are certain players, and I say at the beginning of every season, I think last season I said we had 6 players that I believed were Champions League class. And it's all about trying to increase that to 7, 8, get up to 9 or 10. And it's not to say the other guys are rubbish or won't get to that class, Patrick. But Yang's a player for me that if I see him on the start 11 tonight on the team sheet, I'm thinking weak link. He's going to be miles off it. Sorry, shoot me in the comments section for saying that. But when I see a name like Yang, I just don't think he's got the quality for a game like this evening, Patrick. Am I being unfair?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think it's a very realistic view. Obviously, we're probably not going to go toe to toe with Aston Villa. They've got a lot more money than we do. They play in the Premier League. They're at home. Their squad probably costs a multiple of what ours does. But you're right. We do have players in the squad who are Champions League quality, and we've got players who aren't. And there's obviously different levels in that squad. Yang's probably one of those ones where he's shown promise. He's maybe one for the future. He's certainly not a first team player. Maybe a player that can go out on loan or something. I think he's still quite young, very young. But he's not a Champions League level player. That's for sure. I mean, you're looking at Callum McGregor, Carter Vickers, Kasper Schmeichel, probably Alistair Johnston, Jota coming in, Kyogo who's just left, Rio Hatate. Those types of players. Kuhn, Maeda. I think I might have listed them all there, but Yang certainly isn't in that bracket. The wing is a tricky one because we are sort of collecting them at the moment, and yet there's a good few who probably aren't good enough. You'd imagine Palmer, either this window or in the summer, is going to leave permanently. Yang, because he's young and shown a bit of promise and he's quite quick, I'd maybe like to see him go out on loan. But with Forrest injured, Jota still to get up to speed, Maeda suspended tonight, obviously. All of a sudden, you're actually left quite short on the wing.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a quandary, and maybe this young Norwegian boy will come in for 7 million. Who knows? I'll not even attempt to pronounce his name at this moment. But Yang, if he does play tonight, is obviously not of the level required against Aston Villa, and I think it's part of the reason why Jota's came in, and I think we'll see. I think as we spoke about earlier. Going forward, Jota, Maeda and Ida sharing those 2 roles. obviously Ida in the middle, Jota on the left, and Maeda, going between the two, going forward. But you're right, he is not one of these Champions League players. I think you're right. Maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, he probably had 5 or 6 Champions League level quality players. With the addition of Jota, with the addition of Tierney, hopefully this window, if not in the summer, um, you're almost at a full 11, in my opinion. If you get Carter Vickers and Trusty in there, you've got Engels and maybe hold on to Hatate, Kuhn, Jota, and if Ida can sort of rekindle his form and score in the big games, or whether we choose to play Dyson up front as the first choice striker, I think you're pretty close to a full 11 of Champions League level quality players. Which as we spoke about at the very top of the show, it's an exciting time to be a Celtic fan.
I can only imagine how disappointed James Forrest is at the moment. I mean, what a season this could have been for him in the twilight of his career. Do you know what I mean? Because we're struggling just for the numbers. And he'd have been guaranteed to play I think he would have played nearly every game for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
So it's a hell of a shame for James.
No, without a doubt. Now, I don't know if any of you watched back the interview yesterday, the press conference rather, where Brendan Rodgers was asked about the winger whose name Patrick's not going to attempt. Hopefully we're talking. It's Sondre, isn't it? Yeah, Sondre. Is that the same guy? I might be wrong. And Brendan Rodgers said he knew nothing about it. And I was thinking, oh no, not that again. Not that. We're not going to sign players that Brendan doesn't know anything about again. But you're right, 1 minute, John, and you're thinking, by the way, we've got a plethora of wingers here. We need to get a couple of them out the door. The next thing you know, we're talking about playing midfielders in there. So it just shows you how quickly that can flip. And I'm the same, Jamesy Forrest, in a game like tonight with his experience, even if it's just as an impact sub, or to see the game out when we're 2-0 up, he would be tremendous for a game like tonight. And he's a big loss. But it does lead us on to Jota coming back to the football club, John, and the surprise of that, and whether or not Celtic obviously have chanced them it because we've been negotiating with the team Kyogo was to join Rennes. But Jota's back and he's had a tough time of it. And I think yesterday, one of the big things I was focusing on was the fact that we can give him a really good environment. And with a manager like Brendan Rodgers, in which he can build up his confidence and look as though he needs to build up his muscle as well. Looks a bit slim at the minute. It does Jota.
I noticed that this morning they've announced that Kasper Schmeichel's been appointed as his dietitian. He looks. The boy looks like things were really bad at Rennes, like they weren't feeding him. I'm sure I don't expect anything from him, to be honest with you, in the next couple of months. I think it'll be a bonus if we get it. Nobody's out for that long and comes back onto a game straight away. If you think of it, if you've had a player out for 6 months, you're nursing them back, 30 minutes at a time. And he's been out for effectively a year and a half. But, I mean, I was thinking the other day, I mean, can you imagine, if we had brought another striker in and he was your first choice striker, and then you had Maeda playing on the left, we'd have the most expensive bench in Celtic's history. Mm-hmm. Imagine like Ida and potentially Engels and Jota sitting on the bench. That would be insane. So I just thought that was wild. And people were saying, "Oh, that's just a drop in the ocean in the current Champions League environment." Aye, and this season's the first time we've ever bought Champions League quality players. For the money that they actually go for. And instead of trying to find the diamonds in the rough, buying lorry loads of coal and trying to find a diamond. So to say that it's just a drop in the ocean, aye, but we've only just jumped into that ocean.
Yeah.
And so, to have a bench that's worth tens of millions would be sensational for us. Maybe not so sensational because it means we've spent a lot of money on guys who aren't on the first team. But anyway, yeah, you take my point. It would be a hell of a thing for the squad. Jota is, I'm a wild fan of Jota. It's just like I was getting all emotional when he was coming back. I was like, oh my God, can't believe it. He was obsessively singing the song for a couple of days there. So it's great to see him. But I mean, this is I was asking the other day whether it was, you probably saw, I put a tweet up that I was asking, is this the best bit of business that we've ever done? So how much did we actually make on Jota? So we bought him for 6.5, sold him for 25, profit of 18.5, in which we reportedly had to pay a 30% sell on, which takes us to 12.95, returning for a reported 8 million, profit of 4.95 million before tax. Given that he gave us 3 years of service, he's only 25, and therefore this story's not done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he could get to 28, 29 and go for another ton of money. So he could well be the best signing and re-signing we've ever made. Now, I did throw into that mix and it started a big argument because I was saying 4 best bits of business. The King of Kings, just because we never sold him, but what a service. And he's the King of Kings, he gets in every list. KT, Matt O'Reilly, and Jota would be in there. And then there was some interesting, ones that I had missed. Dembele, that was a big one. And Big Virgil because of the sell-on. I missed Big Virgil because of the sell-on, which was, so it was 13 million plus 9 million. Dembele, we got him basically free and he went for 18.5. Yeah, but the biggest one potentially hasn't even happened yet, and that would be Frimpong at his current valuation, because there's many's a slip twixt cup and lip, as they say. But if he was to go in his current valuation and we get 30% of it, you'd be looking sort of 26 million, and we bought him for 400 grand. So I just thought it was an interesting exercise. But Jota, from a purely, from a fan's point of view, I was a massive fan of Jota and the iconic thing. I mean, he knew how to work that crowd as well.
Yeah.
The salute, the whole thing, man, it was. I can understand why he was nervous about coming back and potentially damaging his legacy and stuff like that. But you've got to back yourself. You have to have the confidence to back yourself in this game, and he has to be confident he can come back and reach those levels. Not just reach them, but surpass them. And for him to have gone to Saudi, which was an absolute catastrophe for many reasons, and then to go to Rennes, and as soon as he gets in the door, they employ a manager that doesn't play wingers. The boys are rough. So I hope. From the looks of him, he's made a few quid, but he didn't spend any of it in his lunch. So he's obviously, I don't know how he's enjoying himself, but he's doing it without calories, that's for sure. But he's obviously, he's got a big pile of cash to sit on. But at the end of the day, I think that's got to damage you as a player 18 months later. I think Brendan's the very man to bring him back to himself, and we'll hopefully see the best of him in due course.
Yeah, and the interesting thing when you're bringing the financials into it, John, Jota now, when you look at the combined transfer fees at 25 years of age that have accumulated around buying Jota, 63.3 million euros has been spent on this player, and he plays for Celtic, and he's only 25. Yeah. But I do think that, to incubate a player who is low in confidence, and obviously put him on a platform where he can perform to the ability that the level of ability that that he's got, John. There are similarities there, I think, also, although the path has been different to Kieran. Tierney. He leaves the football club. I mean, people say plagued with injury. Yes, he has been. But I made the point another week there, James. Kieran Tierney, at 27, has played more football than Greg Taylor at the same age. Yet you look at Taylor and think he's played loads of games. Well, Kieran Tierney's played a lot of football. And the way that we're managing Carter Vickers, for example, right now, I watched back Brendan's press conference and the wording of not risking him. What that says to me is Carter Vickers could play tonight. He's probably fit enough to play tonight. He felt something at training, apparently. But we're going to manage that. And I think that's all we need to do with KT as well.
Yeah, I think Tierney's injury record might have been blown a bit out of proportion. I had a wee look back. I can't remember the exact number. I think it was around 25. I don't think since Tierney left Celtic, there's been a season where he's played less than 25 games. The injuries just stand out more because I think they were frequently happening on Scotland international duty, or he was getting injured and missing Scotland squads and so on and so forth. So it was breaking the Scottish football news a lot more often. But we're delighted to have Kieran Tierney back home, and we're delighted to have Jota back home as well. We were talking about Champions League quality players just about 10 minutes ago. I think it's going to take Jota a wee bit of time to get back to that level. But when we were playing the Champions League under Ange, I think a few of the players might have been suffering from imposter syndrome. Some of the fans might have been suffering from imposter syndrome when we were taking some batterings. But Jota was one of the players who could always come out of these games with his head held high. Even games where we're getting beat 5-1 off Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, he's there curling a free kick. These games that we were losing, I think Jota was still giving a good account of himself, and that's why he ended up getting the big move to Saudi. But things ultimately didn't work out. He's back at Celtic Park now, and it's going to take him a bit of time to get up to speed. It might be 6 months in Nicholas Kuhn, and I think the pitchforks are going to be out from mainstream agendas, from fans of other clubs, because it's an £8 million signing, and if he doesn't hit the ground running, the pitchfork's going to be out from everyone. But as Celtic fans, we know the player he can be, and we know the quality of player he has been for us previously. So we just need to be patient. Give him a bit of time. We've been following his struggles in Saudi. We've been following his struggles in France. Just give him the time, because we know the player he can be. And Jota's got a point to prove. He's been discarded at 2 clubs now since he's left Celtic. Kieran Tierney's got a point to prove. He was discarded, I think, twice at Arsenal, replaced by Alexander Zinchenko, and then an academy player. Ange used to make the point all the time. He loved signing players when he was at Celtic with points to prove. Guys like Joe Hart, guys who really had to lift themselves up against someone to call home. And I don't think Jota's going to be so quick to leave Celtic again, because I think if you look at Jota's career as a whole, the only club he's had success at is Celtic. The multiple loan spells he's gone out on haven't worked out. His big money move hasn't worked out. I think he's going to show us a bit more respect. The same way Cameron Carter-Vickers, I think, is going to show the club respect by staying around just a little bit longer, because he was getting discarded by Tottenham loan spell after loan spell after loan spell. He's finally found a place to settle, and the players are going to respect that. And Brendan's signing players at a point to prove. We're going to have a hungry squad, hopefully a competitive squad with some more bodies coming in for decent fees as well. Long gone are the days of Klamalas and Soros now. Thank goodness for that. We have a competitive squad.
Wait a minute. Klamala and Soro, you forgot Amido Balde, mate.
Amido Balde.
I think that Chris made a fantastic point yesterday, in as much as, don't tell him I said that, by the way, in as much as these guys, your CCVs, your KTs, and your Jotas, they are the manifestation as the grass is not always greener.
Yeah.
Don't believe your agent when he tells you everything's going to be hunky-dory and the best thing to do is go for the money. Not always the case. Not always. Now, admittedly, 2 of those guys went away and got tons of money and you've now come back. But, it's not the perfect manifestation. I take that back. But it does point out that, it does teach that lesson. But if you look at the turnover machine that is our left-hand side potentially tonight, you take Yang, Hatate, Taylor, Scales, just, we might as well just give them the ball anytime we try and go down the left. And you put into that, Jota and KT, all of a sudden it's like a whole different feel to it. And Trusty usually would be in there as well. So if you had Trusty, KT, Hatate, Jota, that's a whole different feel. But the problem, again, it's just this one game. And I think the one thing that none of us want to happen is just, especially because it's English and we just have to tolerate their ignorant press, is we don't want to take a hiding tonight. We are missing important players and we don't want to take a hiding because, we're never going to hear the end of it. I think it's really important that we dig in and try and take a point. We make this game as difficult as we can for them. I couldn't care less if we score. I'd be overjoyed by 0-0. I think that's a fantastic result for us.
No, you're right.
Yeah, I agree with John there. I was just on the arrogance. I was there when Hibs played Aston Villa in a Conference League qualifier. I think it was the start of last season. I think they played them. It was an absolute hammering, 5-1 to Aston Villa at Easter Road. I think for a good half an hour, the Villa away end was giving it the Scotland get battered everywhere they go chant, and every sort of arrogant chant that you could get that follows on from that. So we're going to get the exact same if we take a hiding. Just set up shop early on, Celtic, and just don't let that happen.
Well, we need to take a leaf out of Philip Clement's book, don't we? And we go for a 0-0 win.
A 0-0 win tonight. Listen, it's already been an hour since we started chatting. There's so much to cover. Kieran, Tierney, Jota, Kyogo, and a Champions League playoff. It really is a great time to be a Celtic. We started off by talking like that, and it still is. If you want to come and join us tomorrow night, actually, there's 18 tickets left. Big John will be talking about Kyogo's departure, Jota's return, KT's return, and whatever happens tonight. And the ticket link is under the video. 18 left. I'll tell you something, John, you're a wee bit more relaxed this week than you were last week. And I hope you go enjoy the game tonight. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We will be covering the game as always. Chris McElwain will be on hosting duties this evening, half an hour before kickoff. I will be live at Bad for anybody who wants to come along. You get free pies. It's free entry. And the Liam McGrandles will be on stage giving you live music as well.
I need to leave now to get there, Paul John.
Exactly. Free pies, John. Free pies. We'll send a few up for Jota as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved in a Celtic state of mind.